I got to be honest with you. I'm not disappointed to hear this. I love The Last of Us, but it does make me nervous that Sony is starting to pigeonhole all of their teams into certain projects that I used to take the piss out of Microsoft for doing with Xbox. Why would you want to have a studio like Turn 10 that's known as the Forza studio? What if they want to make something else one day? It's the same thing with that I would say with Polyphony when they made something like Tourist Trophy, but they make Gran Turismo, but they're not only supposed to make Gran Turismo. I think that's what they want to make. And that's what makes the most sense. But Sony seems to be getting into this rut, and Santa Monica Studio had said themselves, Eric Williams said, we would love to be the God of War studio. Don't you want to do something else? That's my major concern.
Yeah, it's incredibly, this is remarkably disappointing to me. I just don't, it's not that The Last of Us isn't an incredible experience. It's just a matter of like, I mean, even Neil Druckmann, I believe, said, when he was talking about The Last of Us Part 2 a little bit before the launch, or maybe even way before the launch, he was like, we don't use the word fun when describing The Last of Us Part 2. And a lot of people clowned on that. Although I think we've gotten into conversations about like, obviously, like there's different types of like, obviously games that are engaging are still worthy of your time. I would argue that High on Life is one of those games where it's like, it's not, I don't find the gameplay of High on Life particularly fun, but I do find the world engaging and the writing engaging, and it's a different type of engaging for sure. But I think that's valid. It's just a matter of me wanting to see Naughty Dog make a fun game again. Because I've brought up Crash Team Racing a lot generally, and it's because it's like probably, in my opinion, like the best kart racer ever made, and Naughty Dog made it by accident. It is so fun, it is so good, it is so technically sound, it is so absurdly fun, and the fact that they did that by accident is amazing to me. And I know that that's a very different studio now. There's like different talent there than there used to be. I get that, but I want that studio to do more than just this depressing, quite frankly, Oscar bait video game content.
We have the HBO show, and maybe they knew early on, and maybe especially now, they know that this is really, really good. And they've got everyone's favorite word, synergy. And in addition, Naughty Dog has, even though they didn't fully make it, they got their chops going on the PS5 with Last of Us Part 1, and they're working on Factions. So I would imagine that they are, if they're going to make The Last of Us Part 3, there isn't a better time than right now. They are actively in development in that world. I'm sure that there could be some asset sharing, some different mechanical aspects that they can kind of coast right into developing this game. So from a financial perspective, and theoretically, let's say the HBO show is really good, then you imagine they're going to do part 2 also as HBO show. And so they can have part 3 ready to go. So you have the show, you have the game. But I think that that's the realistic aspect of it in terms of development. I think that where I veer into some wishful thinking is that they can get this done relative to what they've done in the past quickly. And I just don't know. It's probably wishful thinking about how long between when The Last of Us Part 2 was announced and when it actually came out. I'd like to think that because, like I said earlier, it seems like they can just kind of coast right into this with a lot of development and assets ready to go. But at the same time, this is Naughty Dog, and they're known to be perfectionists and change things and redo things. So I think it makes sense, yes, that they're doing it. I just wonder how long it will take. Because I think the ideal thing is that they can get this game out and then, like a lot of people want, what Chris is saying, move on to something else. I think that would be awesome. But if they're going to do it, I would rather them do it now than get into something else that we enjoy and like a lot and then go back to it.
The Last of Us Part 2 is conspicuously absent from PlayStation 5. We all know that. I think at some point they're not going to do what they did with The Last of Us Part 1. They're going to have a big pomp and circumstance porting of that game to PS5. That might come in a prelude to a tease for the third game, and that might all happen at the same time, perhaps around the end of the first season of The Last of Us on HBO or something. There could be some, we were saying synergy, there could be some sort of timing there. But I don't know. I love The Last of Us. I think they have to wrap it up. I do think that they should do it sooner rather than later if they're going to do it at all. And then I think they have to move on. You got to move on after that. And I think everyone's going to be totally fine with that. Seems like Sony wants 2-3 games, trilogies. We knew that God of War could have been a trilogy and wasn't. I think that God of War and God of War Ragnarok are so long that it should have been a trilogy. You could have gotten a whole third game out of all the extra shit in that game. There's only one new IP on PlayStation from Sony on PlayStation 5 of any consequence, and that's Returnal. And I don't think that we're looking at that as a fucking barn burner. They're probably going to extract some sort of sci-fi show out of that from the creators of The Expanse or something, but really when you look at it, it's like Demon Souls, Ratchet and Clank, God of War, Horizon, The Last of Us. There's nothing new happening at all. Spider-Man 2, Wolverine, which is just another Marvel product. I think we know that somewhere in the ether, something has to be in the works that's new, but we're running out of real estate.
I think it's possible that we'll see more new stuff. It's just a matter of, it just feels like with the way that AAA game development goes now and the sheer amount of time that it takes going from one project to the next, what used to feel a little bit more digestible in like the mid to early to late 2000s, in the sense that you get a game and then a sequel every 2 to 3 years. That's becoming a lot more drawn out. And maybe they're still stuck in this model of, hey, we need to do trilogies, or we need to really start franchising this thing in the same way that we used to. But the timelines just don't match up anymore. I mean, Ghost of Tsushima took how many years? 7? I can't imagine that the next one's going to take another, I can't imagine the next one's going to take that much longer again. I just find this ecosystem less interesting to pay attention to as a result of it. It's frustrating. Because it's like, oh, the next Naughty Dog game is going to come out, and it's like, and we're going to be waiting for several years, and then it's going to be The Last of Us again. And for how many years are we going to be doing that? It feels like there's a wild card nature that is missing.
We make fun of, and I think rightfully so, Xbox for not having any games per se and not really producing any games. But here's the truth, is that when you think about the games that are in development or that they've messed with or that they've even canceled, at least there has been an inclination to do something new. It's not worked out very well, but it's like you would want the talent of Sony with the inclination of Microsoft, and that would be the perfect thing. You have a revival of Perfect Dark. They tried to get Phantom Dust off the ground. Fable has long been percolating. They have all of these different, they helped fund Titanfall, the original Titanfall on which was a Xbox One and Xbox 360 console exclusive. Redfall, I think, looks dope. I love vampires. That Starfield, though none of that stuff has materialized or hasn't been very good or may not be very good, who knows? That does seem a little more interesting than God of War 17 and The Last of Us Part 3 and all these different things. I mean, I get that point. But all things being equal, Dustin, I'd rather be in our land just because at least the end product is there and the end product is good.
Right. I think that one of the biggest things I've learned through doing this show is that not only me, but the three of us are not like the general consumer or of games and also media. The reality is, if something is good, people want more of it until it is no longer good. And that's kind of, and financially, that also makes sense. And I'm not trying to knock anybody for wanting more things that they like. We all want more things that we like. It's just, we like to, I don't know. It seems weird, but we want things to change up and new ideas and stuff like that. And most people don't want that. And I'm not saying that they're wrong for wanting the same things, but that's where the financial imperative is. And so I think that we have lofty ideas about like an immaculate trilogy or a complete story, but as Chris mentioned a few weeks ago, it's the death of finality. There are financial imperatives to keep things going forever.
Indeed.
So, and I think Sony is acutely aware of this, just as other publishers are, and they will keep making the games in the series you like as long as you keep buying them.